We continue now at the top of Daf Kufnun Heyam and Beis in Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 155b. On the previous summer, there was a machlokas amoraim. How old does a person have to be to sell the land, let's say of his father's estate? Rava said that Rav Nachman said the person has to be 18 years old, and Rav Huna bar Chinna said that Rav Nachman said the person has to be 20 years old. And the Gemara is in the middle of asking from a brisa. The brisa was talking about an incident in Bnei Brak where a son sold property of the father, and the family members now come and they say the sale was not a good sale. The recipients should not get the land. Rather, we should keep the land because at the time that he sold the land, he had not yet developed the physical signs of maturity. And the brisa went on to say that they asked if they could inspect the body to see if he had the physical signs of maturity. Rabbi Akiva said you can't do that because it would defile the body. And also those simanim, those signs change after the person dies. So it would not even matter if you inspected the body now after the person died. And so the Gemara now says this whole brisa makes sense if you say that the person has to be 18 years old. So it would make sense that they would come and they would say, what's the halach in terms of inspecting the body? They want to see, are there physical signs of maturity or not? That would determine whether this person was able to sell the property or not. But if you say that the person has to be 20 years old in order to sell the property, so kibod kulei ma'have, so even inspecting, what difference does that make? But we learned in a Mishnah, this Mishnah is in Meseches Nida, that Ben Esrim, that once a person is 20 years old, shelo hevi shtei saros, but he doesn't have the two hairs, those signs of maturity, yaviu raya shu Ben Esrim, so then they just bring evidence, they bring proof that he's actually 20 years old, v'hu asaris, and then he's considered to be a saris. That is a person that we assume, even though he is an adult, he will never develop those signs of maturity, and therefore, since he's a saris, the halach is lo cholitz v'lo miyavim. A saris does not do chalitza or yibum. The whole point of doing yibum is in order that you're going to have children, because the case over there of yibum is that the husband died without any children, and so then the widow, she marries the husband's brother in order to have children, but that's not going to apply if this brother was a saris, so there's no chalitza, there's no yibum. But the point of the Gemara here is that once a person reaches 20, the signs don't make a difference anymore. It doesn't matter whether there are physical signs of maturity or not, and therefore this brisa only makes sense if you say that he was selling property already from the age of 18. And the Gemara says, La vitmar Allah, wasn't it stated on that Mishnah, Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak Amar Rav, that Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak said that Rav said, V'hu shenoldu bo simone saris. When we say in this Mishnah that it doesn't, that if the person is 20 years old and he doesn't have the signs of maturity, so then we say that he's considered to be a saris, that's only if there are other signs, he has other physical characteristics that indicate that he's a saris. If he has those other characteristics, then we assume that he really is an adult and he is just a saris. But without those characteristics, actually the signs of maturity do make a difference. And the Gemara says, Amar Rava says, Dekanami, we can infer this as well from the language of the Mishnah in Nida, Tekatani v'hu hasaris, because the language is, and he is a saris, shma mina. So you see from there that we're talking about someone who has other signs of being a saris as well. And the Gemara continues, V'chiglo noldu lo simone saris. But let's say we're talking about someone who doesn't have any signs, any other signs of being a saris. And so then the question is, ad kama, so until what age, at what age do you determine that now this person will never have the physical signs of maturity, and we should just assume that he's a saris? It's obviously not 20 years old, because we just said at 20 years old that there does have to be some other signs that the person is a saris. And the Gemara says, Tani Rabbi Chia taught, ad rov shenosav, he has to make it to the majority of his years. We understand that an average person lives for 70 years, and then therefore the majority would be at the age of 36. At that age already, we would assume that he's never going to get those signs of maturity, and he is in fact an adult who is a saris. And the Rashbam explains, V'hu noldu bo simone saris, again in the Mishnah Meseches Nida, he has to have other signs that he is a saris. Simonin hamifuroshin b'yivamas, these signs are elucidated in Meseches Yivamas. Dekeven de'iko tarti, then already you have two pieces of evidence that he's a saris, so therefore chashvinan like a gadol, then we say he's an adult again, who's considered to be a saris. Avol ben esrim shelo hevi saris, let's say the person is 20 years old without the hairs that indicate that he is mature, ve'ein bo simone saris, but let's say he doesn't have other signs that he's a saris, so then actually chashvinan like a katan ad rov shenosav, we would say that he's considered a minor until he reaches the majority of his years, until he reaches 36 years old. Kidim mefarish ve'azal, as we will explain. V'noldu bo simone saris mekami dilahavi ben esrim, let's say he has signs that he's a saris before he's 20 years old, v'saris nami lo aisi, and he doesn't have the hairs that indicate maturity, still akati lo samchinan lemechshavei saris, still we're not going to say that he's a saris ad dilahavi ben esrim until he actually reaches 20 years old. V'hebo simone Simone Saris, the Ikatarti, then already he has the signs of Saris and he's 20. So then we say that with those two indications, we say again that he's an adult who is a Saris. And the Gemara again said, V'chilo noldibo Simone Saris, let's say he doesn't have those signs. Besaros nami lohevi, and he doesn't have the hairs as well. Arkama nachzikeyu kekatan, for how long do we say that this is a minor, that he's considered to be a minor? And again, the Gemara said, Rov Shenosov, it means the majority of his years. That's Lamed Vav Shanim, that's 36 years. Shein Rov, that's already the majority. Shein Rov Shivim, because that's the majority of 70. Kedechsiv Yimei Shenoseinu Bohem Shivim Shana, as it's written in the Pasuk in Tehillim, that again, the average lifespan is 70 years. And the Gemara continues, when someone would come before Rabbi Chia and he didn't have the signs yet of maturity, so ikachish, if the person was very thin, Amar Luhu Livri, Rabbi Chia would tell the person, you should eat a little more, you should get a little fatter, that will allow you to develop those signs. V'ivri, and if he looked very healthy, if he had weight on him, Amar Luhu Licha, she would say get a little bit thinner, and that will cause the signs to come. Dahani Simoni, because when it comes to these signs of maturity, Zimnin da'asu machmas kechishusa, sometimes they come because a person is thinner, Zimnin da'asu machmas b'ryusa, sometimes they come because a person is heavier. And the Gemara continues, they had the following question, Toch Zman, when it comes to exactly, let's say, the 18th year, if you hold you have to be 18 in order to sell property, or let's say the 20th year, if it's exactly the 20th year, if you have to be that old to sell property, so then Kilifnei Zman, is that considered to be before that time? Is that considered to be younger 18, or younger than 18, or younger than 20? Oh, Kilachar Zman, or is that considered to be after the time, and he would be able to sell the property? The Rashbam explains, Toch Zman, Shnas Shmona Esrei Gufei Lamar, meaning the actual 18th year when the person is actually 18, or Ushnas Esrim Gufei Lamar, or let's say the year when the person is actually 20, according to the one who says 20. Vehevi Saros, and assuming the person does have the hairs that indicate maturity. So again, is that considered to be before Kilifnei Zman, like before the time, She'ein Mechira Su Mechira B'nechsei Aviv, that a sale would not be considered to be a good sale, or is it considered to be Kila Achar Zman, which would mean that the sale is considered to be a good sale? That's the question of the Gemara. And the Gemara continues, Rava Amar Rav Nachman, Rava says that Rav Nachman says, Tochzman Kilifnei Zman, that during that year it's like before the time, he would not be able to sell the property. Rava bar Rav Shila Amar Rav Nachman, Rava bar Rav Shila says that Rav Nachman says, Tochzman Kilachar Zman, that during that year it's like after that year he is able to sell the property. And the Gemara continues, V'hadu Rava, and that which Rava said, again, that it's Kilifnei Zman, that you can't sell the property, Lav Befeirish Itmar, Rava did not say that explicitly, Ela Michlala Itmar, it was actually something that was inferred. Tahu Tochzman, because there was a case of a person who was Tochzman, he was within that year. Ta'azal Zav and Nichse, he went and he sold property. V'yasal Lakami de Rava, he came before Rava. Amar Lahu Lo Asav Lo Klam, he said to them that sale is nothing. Man Dechaz Asavar, now the one who saw that incident thought, Misham de Tochzman, Kilifnei Zman, that it was because since he was within the year, that's like before the year, and that's why it wasn't a good sale. But the Gemara says, V'lo, it's not really true. That's not why Rava said what he said, because Hasam Shatusa Yiserta Chazabe, he saw that the person was acting very irrationally, and therefore it showed that he was not competent to be involved in this kind of a transaction, to have a kamishachar lulavde, because he was freeing his slaves. It made no sense to do that in that context, and that's why Rava disqualified the sale. And the Gemara continues, Shalach le Gidel bar Menashe le Rava, Gidel bar Menashe sent Rava the following, Yilamdeinu Rabbeinu, teach us our Rebbe, Tinokes, Bas Arba Esrei Shana v'Yomechad. Let's say you have a young girl, she's 14 years old in a day, so she's not yet 18 or 20 years old, normally not allowed to sell property, but Yodas Betiv Maso Matan, but let's say she understands commerce, she understands business, and therefore maybe we would think that she would be able to make the sale. So Mahu, what would be the halach in that case? Shalach le sent to him, Im Yodas Betiv Maso Matan, if she understands business, Mekcha Mekach Umem Kara Memkar, then what she buys, what she sells, and it is valid. And the Gemara says, V'lishlach leitinok. Well, why did they send the message talking about a girl? Why not about a young boy? And the Gemara says, Ma'isa shoya kachaya. There just happened to be an incident. It was with a girl. That's why the question was asked with regards to a girl. V'lishlach leitinokas bas shtei mesrei shana v'yom echad. Why not just send the question with a young girl who's 12 years old in a day, so she's reached adulthood? Why the age of 14? And again, the Gemara says, Ma'isa shoya kachaya. That just was the incident. They were asking the question with regards to a particular incident that actually occurred. And the Gemara continues, Hau pachos mi ben esrim da'azal zavin nichse. There was a person who was less than 20 years old, and he went and he sold the property, nichse avua kegidel bar Menashe. He went and sold the property of his father like Gidel bar Menashe, meaning to say, he sold the property even though he was younger than 20, but he was somebody who understood business, so he was able to sell the property. Azal akame de Rava, he came before Rava. Amru le korove, and his relative said, this young man who sold the property, he wanted to go back on the sale. He changed his mind, and therefore he wanted to convince Rava that he actually didn't understand business so well. So his relatives gave him some advice. His relatives said to him, Zil echol tamri, v'shadi be kashiyasa be Rava, go eat some dates, and then throw the pits by the house of Rava, and he'll understand that you're not mature, and therefore he will say that the sale is not a good sale. And so the Gemara continues, Avid Hachi, he did exactly this, and Amar Luhu, and so therefore he said to them, Rava said to them, Zavine lav Zvine, this person really cannot be mature enough to understand business, therefore the sale is not a sale. And the Gemara continues, now when they were writing up the document to say that the sale was not a good sale, Amru Leisa, then they said to him, Amru Le Lakuchos, then the buyers rather, they said to him, Zil Eimale Rava, they said to him, go tell Rava, Megillas Esther Bezuzah, that a Megillas Esther, if you want to write that up, it costs 1 zuz. Shtara Demar Bezuzah, and you're charging me a zuz for just writing up this star, which is much easier to write than a Megillas Esther. Now, the Lakuchos, the buyers, they were giving this advice because they wanted him to use this argument in negotiation that would prove that he was competent, and then the sale actually would go through. So Azal Amar Le, so he went and he said exactly that. Amar Luhu, so then Rava reversed his decision, and he said to them, Zvine, the sale is considered to be a good sale because clearly he is competent in order to negotiate. And the Gemara continues, Amru Le Krove, so now the relatives, they said to him, they said to Rava, Lekuchos Agmaru, don't believe what he said in this negotiation. The buyers just told him to say that. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just doing exactly what the buyers told him to do, and therefore the sale should not be a good sale. And the Gemara continues, Amar Lahu, so he said to them, Rava said to them, Mesavri le Savar, but he's able to understand what they are saying. If they explained it to him and he can understand it, Kavan de Mesavri le Savar, since they explained this to him and he understood what they were saying, and he understood that he should make that argument, so made Dayada, he clearly knows what he's doing. V'hai David Hachi, and the reason why he did this, the reason why he threw those pits in front of my house, Chutzpah Yiseiru, he's just a person who has a lot of chutzpah. He acts in this fashion in terms of his behavior, in terms of proper etiquette, but it doesn't have anything to do with his competence. He clearly is competent, and therefore his sale is considered to be a good sale. Again, chutzpah yiserahu dehavabe, he was just acting with an extra level of chutzpah. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Huna Bereder Rav Yoshua, Rav Huna the son of Rav Yoshua says, Ula edus, when it comes to testimony, eduso edus, even somebody who is young and not able to sell property, but in terms of testifying in court, he is allowed to testify. And the Gemara continues, Amar Marzutra says, Lo amran ela l'metaltli, when we say that this younger person is allowed to testify, that's only that he can testify with regards to movable property, which he is allowed to sell. The idea that the discussion we had above, that a person who's not 18 or not 20 is not able to sell property, that was talking about land. He is able to sell movable property, he's able to sell metaltalin, and therefore he can testify with regards to metaltalin. That's what we were saying. But when it comes to land, he can't testify. If he can't be involved in the transaction, if he can't buy or sell the land, then he is not allowed to testify with regards to the land as well. And the Gemara continues, Amalei Ravashi Marzutra, Ravashi said to Marzutra, Ma'ishna metaltali desvine zvine. What's the difference that by movable objects you're saying that it's a good sale, and therefore you're saying since it's a good sale he can testify? But if that's the logic, Ela me'ata, but according to that, Hadatnan, but we learned in the Mishnah Hapautos that when it comes to young children, even younger than the age of maturity, let's say boys younger than 13, even if you're talking about girls that are younger than 12, Mekchon, Mekach, Memkar, and Memkar b'metaltalin, we say that their buying is considered valid, and their selling is considered valid when it comes to movable property. So hachanami they do san edus, and now you're going to say also that they're allowed to testify. That would not make any sense. And the Gemara says, Amarlei said back to him, Hasam over there, when you're talking about children that are actually minors, so ba'ina va'amdu shnehu anoshim v'leka, you need it to be shnehu anoshim. The people need to be at least considered adults in terms of the stricto raisa definition of being adults, and therefore, of course, a minor is not going to be able to testify. And the Gemara continues, Amar Ameimar says, matana, when we say that a person who's younger than 20 or younger than 18 is not allowed to sell the property of his father's estate, that's true by sales. But when it comes to gifting that property, if he gives away the land, that would be effective. Amar le Ravashi li Ameimar, Ravashi said to Ameimar, Hashta umazvine, now if when it comes to a sale, the Mekabel Zuze, where at least you're receiving something, you're getting some money, Amr Delo, we still say that he's not competent enough to make the sale, because Dilma Mozel Umazvin, maybe he's going to sell it for too little money, and we're afraid that he doesn't understand business properly. So Kol Shagain Matana, certainly if he's giving it away as a gift, the Lomati Levalomidi, where he's getting nothing, of course we should not validate that. Amar Lei said back to him, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Nun Vav Amud Aleph.